Great. Well, thank you. I've heard so much about PopTech from my colleagues, and it's great to finally experience it. As you know, National Geographic has a very similar agenda to PopTech in terms of supporting and empowering change makers, leaders, people who care. And so, as an organization, it is a great honor to take part in this. Now, as you know, National Geographic, it's an organization that really opens our eyes to the world. It helps us understand different cultures. It helps us connect to different people. It helps us connect to the natural world. But the world has changed drastically since National Geographic started. In 1888, there was only 1.5 billion people on the planet. There's now over 7 billion people on the planet. And by 2050, there will be over 9 billion people on this planet. And we're currently using about 1.5 times the resources that the planet can generate naturally. And by 2050, we'll be using almost 3 times the resources the planet can generate. So how are we going to do this? How are we going to live on a planet with more than 9 billion people? This is the great challenge. It's the great challenge for society as a whole. It's something that we take very seriously. And we've been thinking about our unique role as an organization. One is to push the boundaries of science and exploration. The second is to really inspire, to help people understand the value of cultural diversity, the value of biological diversity. And the third is to really empower a generation of change makers. And I want to focus on the latter. Now, if we're trying to empower a generation, what can we do? Well, we can go into schools, which we do. We're in almost every school in America. And we can try and inspire children to care about biological and cultural diversity. We can give grants. We'll be giving about 400 early career grants next year and a whole bunch of other grants, and we hope that many of you in this room apply for those grants. We can create fellowships, and we have 2 amazing fellows of National Geographic here right now. We can provide training opportunities, which we're working on. We can provide tools and technology so people can be more efficient and effective. We can provide opportunities, allowing people to get access to potentially getting the magazine or the channel. And all that's really helpful, but it's not enough. It's not enough if we want to address some of the great challenges of the 21st century. Now, I'm going to ask you to just entertain me for a second and to just close your eyes. Just close your eyes. Now imagine a scientist. Now open your eyes. Now, how many of you imagine somebody in a white lab coat? Now, please be honest. Okay, fair amount. How many of you saw a woman? All right. How many of you saw somebody who was not from the United States? Well, we have a pretty enlightened audience. But if we truly want to address the global challenges, we're going to have to have a global approach. We're going to have a whole bunch of people that don't currently think of themselves as scientists engaging and being involved in the larger process. But we're going to have to go beyond scientists. We're going to have to bring in storytellers. We're going to have to bring in educators, politicians. We're going to have to democratize science. And that's the exciting thing. We can help democratize science through citizen science. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Now, when I first came across citizen science, it was when I had a large team that was collecting camera trap data. So here you have cameras, they're set up, an animal walks by and it takes an image, and we had to identify these images. And it was taking us thousands and thousands of hours. We then discovered that we could get our cameras to upload the information immediately onto an app, and that people could help analyze this data. And very soon, we were sitting back with lots to do because we had all our data analyzed. It was high quality, and we had a whole community that was really excited about analyzing this data. And then I learned about amazing other initiatives that were up and running. I learned about Sarah Parcak's Global Explorer, or David Lang's OpenROV, or people collecting data on viruses spread by mosquitoes, or the biobus, or labs for you. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about citizen science. We're going to talk about how it's transformed the fields that you work in. But we're also going to talk about how it's transforming society itself. So I just want to start with an introduction of Sarah Parcak. Sarah is a space archaeologist. And Sarah is a fellow of National Geographic. She was an emerging explorer in 2012. And as noted already, she won the TED Prize in 2016. And what she's doing is working with a global community to basically analyze satellite data and find archaeological sites of importance. Now, she wants to discover them, but more importantly, make sure that they're not destroyed, that they're protected and they're not looted. She has already made some amazing discoveries with her broad network. There's potentially 17 pyramids that have been discovered, potentially over 3,000 settlements, over 1,000 tombs. And this approach has been applied to the Viking world and to the early Roman Empire. It is absolutely phenomenal what she has achieved. And she's very ambitious. She has a plan to develop an institute for archaeology with training programs all over the world, training people to look after these amazing sites that are discovered, to grow the global network, and to potentially get a satellite up into space that is going to be focused specifically on archaeology. Now, Sarah's working on her second book. She's already defining the field of space archaeology in her first. But she's not only defining the field of space archaeology, she's transforming the way that archaeology will be done in modern time. And I would also like just to mention that Sarah is originally from Bangor, Massachusetts. Maine, excuse me, Bangor, Maine. I've just come from England, so Bangor is somewhere else.
To be fair, you got really late notice of that. That was just right backstage.
Yeah. So with that, Sarah, could you please tell us about your experience with space archaeology and where you feel this field is going to go?
Sure. I've got a few slides to show. So quickly, as you all probably know, there aren't so many pyramids in Bangor, Maine. When I grew up there, I had this passion for ancient Egypt. And I just want to recognize the person, the main reason I'm on this stage today. It's my mom, who's here today, because the Tooth Fairy, when I was 6 years old, brought me a book on Egypt. Thank you, Mom. That moment really inspired me and showed me that when people believe in your dreams and in your visions of far-off, distant places, anything can happen. So when I had my opportunity to make my wish at TED last year, my wish was to create a global army of citizen scientists, millions of people from around the world, to help discover ancient sites and map them in order to protect them before they're gone. I've spent a lot of time in the last couple of years mapping sites in Egypt post-Arab Spring. So many sites have been looted. And I've come to believe that the only way that we can protect these sites for future generations is to empower those future generations. We're not going to save these sites tomorrow. This is a 20-year plan. And you can't protect an ancient site unless you know where it is. So this is why we built Global Explorer. So this is an online citizen science crowdsourcing platform that allows anyone in the world, from 5 to 105, to map, discover, and help in protecting ancient sites. We launched in January of this year. We launched in Peru. We figured most people would know Peru because of Machu Picchu. And to date, we've had over 60,000 users from over 200 countries. They've helped to discover thousands of potential ancient sites, and now we've given the data sets to archaeologists who are beginning to explore them on the ground. But the fun part, so you log on, it's very simple, you get a small tile, you can see that there's no lat long, you have no idea where you are in Peru, you just know that you're somewhere in Peru, and you can mark that there's looting or no looting, that there's a site or no site, you get access to rich content from places like National Geographic. Here's one really amazing hilltop fort that our citizen science communities discovered somewhere in Peru. But the best part is that it's a game. So as you find more tiles, as you map more things, As you go through, you go up in ranks. So you start off as a pathfinder and then a trailblazer, and of course level 10 is a space archaeologist, once you get to the top. But along the way, the important thing that I think that we're doing is we're not only allowing people to become archaeologists and become space archaeologists and help find these ancient sites, we've created this community across the world that's connected to each other. So I hope you can all get on Global Explorer, and I will pass it off to you for David. Thank you.
So David Lang is a maker and a writer, and he is a fellow as well of National Geographic. He was a merging explorer in 2016, and he's co-founder of OpenROV. And so what David basically does is help people build mini submarines that they can deploy around the world and collect data. But not only that, he's provided a platform so people can share that data and explore together. So basically, he's democratizing exploration. And as humans, we spend our time in the terrestrial world. And so we know a fair bit about that area of the planet. But what's often neglected is below the water. And I think that David's technology is really going to help us understand the status and the trends of some of these magical systems we know so little about. So I look forward to seeing this program develop. Could you please tell us about your work?
Absolutely. Okay, so how many of you have ever seen an underwater drone before? So just a few people. So I'm going to show you, actually. I figured better to show than to tell. So it's a pretty small device. It's just this size, so you can fit in a suitcase. It's carry-on luggage, and it's got a camera on the front, and it's got lights, and then it's connected by a thin tether that you just screw on the top right here, and then this thing is on. And it comes back to a Wi-Fi hotspot. It can dive to 100 meters, and you just control it from your phone, and it sends live video, and you can record it and share it. And so these are the devices that we build. The next question I usually get when I tell people that I have a company that builds underwater drones, they say, wow, how did you get into that? You must be an engineer or a scientist. And the answer is neither. This whole thing started about 5 years ago as a treasure hunt. So my friend Eric and I were building, I met this guy, actually, I should say, Eric. And he told me about this cave in Northern California that was rumored to have gold from the gold rush thrown to the bottom of the cave. And he had this idea to build a robot to explore the cave. There were other treasure hunters and scuba divers who tried to make it, but no one found the bottom. So we built a robot. We got some friends together, and we took a trip to the cave, and we sent the robot down to the bottom, and we found over $11 million worth of gold. No, we didn't find anything. But we had a really good time. And we learned a lot. And that story, a weird set of circumstances, got in the New York Times, and then we got emails from people all over the world who wanted one of these underwater robots. So we put our project on Kickstarter, and we raised $100,000, and we started selling these DIY kits. We've been doing that for 5 years. Now we're building products, and we've become one of the largest underwater robot manufacturers in the world. So that's been the story over the past few years. And this is our latest model. This is the Trident. And these devices cost about $1,500, which is a lot, but when you think about how much these devices have cost in the past and the size of them, $50,000, $100,000, this is really a tool that all of a sudden is becoming available to just about everyone. And 100 meters is pretty deep. That's deeper than most divers go. There's a lot to explore in that area. And we've had this community grow up around the project, and they're all sharing their expeditions and their explorations on openexplorer.com. So we have similar name sites, community sites. But it's a really exciting time. It's an exciting time to, one, be building these kinds of tools, but it's also an exciting time to be someone who's always wanted to explore fill in the blank. And we get a lot of those people on our site, and the stories are pretty amazing. So should we jump into the
Sure,
conversation?
Yeah.
Oh, I've got a little video. So here you can see the robot diving, but it's fast. And the video is really high quality, it's HD. And we're gonna be diving one afterwards, just down the street on the docks if you guys wanna come and play with it. So,
Great.
can we leave that play, or do you have
Yeah,
other
no,
slides?
we can keep it going.
Okay.
So I want to start with a question about why we're even talking about democratizing science. I mean, citizen science has been around, from 1800s or before. Why is it a need? Why hasn't it been done already?
Well, I think it's how science is set up. For the most part, archaeologists have been overwhelmingly male and white. That's sort of changing, but not quickly enough. And let's face it, we all grew up, and I brought this hat on purpose, wanting to be Indiana Jones. Guilty as charged, Your Honor. But we have this innate love of discovery. I see it in my 5-year-old son, and we're all born explorers. And yet somehow that in some ways gets beaten out of us at school, right? So if we all love exploring, why can't we all be explorers? And that's where we are with our tools and our technologies. And I say it's time to flip the pyramid of discovery on its head, because everyone wants to be an explorer. We need to give them that.
Yeah, so I think, we've seen this actually throughout the past few days, right? The BioBus out there bringing these labs to students all over, Lab for You. Even, Kevin Esfelt, how many of you are excited about gene drives? Anybody? Okay. Well, they're coming. Kevin and I were talking backstage, and I brought up this idea of DIY bio, because there are these community labs, these DIY biologists. There's 130 of these locations around the world, and people are starting to experiment with CRISPR. And I said, are you worried about these DIY biolabs? He said, oh, I'm not worried about them, because they are the public. They know how to deal with the public, and they're all responsible and watching each other. And I just thought, it's fascinating to think about these new citizen science places actually being pioneers in how do we interpret science for everybody, not just for the few researchers who are working on them. So I think there's a lot of stuff going on with citizen science, and there's a bunch of people trying to interpret it from different ways.
So you're both pioneers in your fields. Can you explain how you came across citizen science, how you came across crowdsourcing, and what really made it clear in your mind that it was the way to go?
Yeah, so I heard of citizen science through this amazing online platform called Galaxy Zoo. Some of you may have used it. It's a way for everyone in the world to go online and help categorize galaxies. And I got on and I played and I thought, whoa, could you imagine doing this for archaeological sites? The majority of the work I do with interpreting satellite data is just pattern recognition. That's all it is. And I don't want to admit how many hours I've spent under fluorescent lighting, scanning and scanning and scanning and scanning. I thought there's got to be a better way of doing this. And the crowd is wise. Look at Who Wants to Be a Millionaire and how often people ask the audience for help. So I thought, what if we were to give this opportunity to the world, right? And get everyone excited and get them engaged and help them with finding things. Because all the time, I miss things. I get eye fatigue when I'm looking at my data. And I think I just saw there was a tremendous opportunity. We need the help. We've got not the whole of the world, but the whole of the world above water to explore from space.
David?
Mine was very organic. We just started sharing this project online and got such incredible feedback. And so it just became this self-fulfilling loop where we wanted more people involved, because the more people we involved, the more fun it was. And then we presented to all of these, really senior oceanography scientists. We give a presentation, and we told them, yeah, we got 3 robots here, and they all fit in carry-on luggage, and we raised $100,000 on Kickstarter, and they were all just shocked, because it was so outside of their way of thinking of, we're going to go and get grants, and we're going to publish papers, and then we're going to, go to conferences. It was just a different thing, and so I knew then that there was something different happening and something special happening.
So when citizen science really started to grow and people were starting to notice it, there was a large community saying that the data was going to be questionable and that really it was just more of an engagement tool. Can you comment in your own experiences how you found the actual data that you're collecting through your initiatives?
So we had no idea if Global Explorer was going to work. I mean, okay, we knew that we could look at satellite imagery, and we mainly had data in more desert environments, so the structures were pretty clear. But we had no idea if, number one, the crowd would be able to recognize and find these sites and map looting, and number two, if it would be of any use to archaeologists. It was a big risk. Obviously, I don't work in Peru, so this was a big change for me, a big change for my team. And so when we got the data back and started going through it, we were blown away. So the crowd has close to a 90% success rate in terms of identifying ancient remains. So number one, the crowd's great. They've been wonderful. They have found thousands of actual ancient sites and features. And we're now parceling that data out to archaeologists in Peru. And they're going out and they're mapping sites with drones. We're working with some amazing Peruvian archaeologists. And the archaeologists are coming back to us now and going, we've been surveying these valleys for 30 years. We had no idea that the sites were there. So the crowd's awesome.
Yeah. So, this is the first question we get from scientists. But what about the data? They always want to know if the data is good. And the answer actually is there's a growing academic field of citizen science, and the study after study is showing that the data is good. And just with a little bit of training, the amateur collected data is just as good as professional. And then you add things like Kalman filters and just the huge amounts of numbers, and it works. But the thing that I think is actually more important is citizen science is one of the few places where there's a bridge between the public and scientists, where it's not just scientists publishing results and telling everyone what happened. It's like there's a conversation. And why that's important is because we need to have a scientifically literate society. Things are moving really fast. I mean, I'm still thinking about Kevin's presentation about gene drives. And that's a discussion, and I applaud Kevin for the way that he's approaching this and saying we need to all be talking about how we develop this and where we use this. And I think citizen science offers a glimmer of hope in that regard.
So we talk about wanting to bring in new communities to have people that don't currently think of themselves as scientists engaged. Can you talk a little bit about the audience, the people that are actually involved in your projects, and whether you think we are truly bringing in new people into science and exploration?
So we considered inclusion and diversity very carefully when we were designing the platform. If you'd asked me about a year and a half ago what UX and UI were, I would have been like, go to the doctor and get that checked out. I had no idea at all. So clearly design is crucial. So you may not believe this, but one of our top super users, a space archaeologist on the platform, is a 91-year-old woman named Doris Jones from Cleveland, Ohio. She's unbelievable. I actually got to Skype chat with her earlier this week. Like, I was in floods of tears. She's so inspirational. But we're getting stories from all over the world. Another great story is from a gentleman in India who wanted to be an archaeologist when he was a little boy. His parents said, no way, you're going to be a doctor. That's just not practical. So he's a doctor and he's successful, but he's not happy. So now he gets to use Global Explorer with his 7-year-old nephew, who he hopes will get to go into exploration.
Yeah, I think that's such a good question, and I hope it keeps coming up in this as citizen science continues to grow, because we have an opportunity. Because right now, the way science goes, it's like mostly white males, and it's like mostly the Western world, right? Thinking about Ramesh's presentation yesterday. And that's not right. I mean, science at its core is not about professorship or publishing papers. It's about curiosity. It's a way of thinking methodically and trying to get to the truth. And so far for me, the best story of citizen science is all the moms like Leanne Walters in Flint, Michigan, who the community was not responding. The institutions were not responding. And so they got together, they worked together, and they did their own study and they did their own research. And we need to hold her up as a celebrity here and say, this is the model. This is a mom in Flint who used science as a tool to hopefully bring about change in our community. And so I think it's about finding the right heroes.
And we are engaging citizens and identifying and looking at images and identifying archaeological sites and so on. But we have artificial intelligence, which is rapidly developing. And I'm just wondering how you view this and the role it will play in these initiatives in the future.
I get asked that often by people, well, don't you feel like the machine is going to take over and then there isn't a role for you anymore? And I say, well, okay, maybe we can do machine learning on satellite imagery, but the machines can't go out and dig. Machines can't feel wonder, well, at least not right now. So I think, for us, we learned a lot. We were able to do about 20% of the non-rainforested areas of Peru in our first iteration over 4 months. For the next iteration, when we launch Country 2 next year, we're going to be doing machine learning and hopefully doing a much larger area. And instead of people going 50, 80, 100 tiles and not looking at things or not finding things, instead, this time they're going to be verifying what the machine has identified as an archaeological site because we've trained it to do that. We'll be able to work faster. We'll be able to do a much larger area. We'll be able to share the data more efficiently with our in-country partners. So I'm really excited about the scale at which we'll be able to grow and with the data that we're going to be able to see. I think my dream is to be able to map all of the Earth's surface in the next 10 years using Global Explorer, and I'm pretty sure we can do it.
Well, that's pretty amazing.
Yes.
So,
what are you going to do, David?
yeah. So, I'm going to give you guys a homework assignment. So, after this session, come down and see the robot. But then I hope you download this app called iNaturalist. If you haven't seen it, it's a simple camera app, and you can snap a photo of any flora and fauna. And it will use artificial intelligence to actually identify what species you're seeing, or help suggest one. And it's pretty amazing. And it's only been this amazing for about 2 months. Before that, it was humans, right? So you'd snap something and you'd kind of identify it, and then some naturalist later on, maybe a day later or 2 days later, would come and say, yeah, I think that's that. And it would become research-grade data. They now have 5 million observations, like 150,000 users. It's an amazing tool. But what they found is they just couldn't get enough naturalists to actually go out and verify everyone's thing. So they used artificial intelligence to augment themselves, to say, we're going to help everybody with, they have a naturalist in their pocket. And to me, that's the promise of this new technologies. It's not going to replace us. It's going to help us. It's going to allow just a few people to do a lot more. And so, and then a lot of people to do a lot more eventually. So I'm optimistic. I don't think it's going to replace us, and I think it's going to help.
So I'd love to continue discussing this, but we're running out of time. But I know all of you will have questions, and hopefully we can continue to discuss at the drinks reception. But just quickly, where do you see all this going? What do you see as the really exciting things that will emerge in the future in the world of citizen science?
I think that the crowd, the world, will realize just how empowered they are. I hope that everyone uses things like Global Explorer, iNaturalist, Galaxy Zoo, and realizes that you all still have that innate 5-year-old inside yourselves. We have so many enormous challenges in the world right now with climate change, with just so many other things that threaten our existence as a species. And I think it's not just about saving our ancient past, it's about saving ourselves. And we need to scale, and scale quickly. And citizen science is the way to do that.
Well, my big hope is that the science ivory tower that's got these cracks in it really breaks open in the next 5 to 10 years. And the reason I care about this is not because I don't want all my scientist friends to still have jobs. I do. But I care a lot about where these discoveries are coming from. And my hope is that it's, the girl in Mumbai right now is growing up is going to be making amazing discoveries. It's not just going to be this kind of the way that the Western world is kind of dominated for so long, that we really give the opportunity for people who are there on the ground to ask questions and to start making discoveries and participate in this great global pursuit of organizing knowledge.
Well, Sarah, David. I hope together we can transform what the scientific community looks like into the future. But you have been two amazing pioneers, and a great honor to speak with both of you about your projects. Thank you.
Thanks.